Islam, Peace Hotep, Canaanland Moors, February 4th, 2014. Today's class is basically just going through some information, but first of all, we have to give honors to the Prophet, Noble Drew Ali, for the dynamic work that he did to get us in order, to get us where we're supposed to be mentally, because he said he came to get us out of mental slavery. So, today's class, um, before we do that, make sure you go get Return of the Ancient Ones, right? Support the Washita, who are Moors, just like everybody else who says that they're Moors. It's not a separation or nothing like that. The Washita are Moors, no problem, right? So make sure you go get the book, support, right? Because we have to support our own. We always like to support other people's stuff. When it's time to support our own, everybody's fronting. But he has bills all of a second, right? The Dark Skull 418, make sure you go get it, right? Like we said, the new slogan, liking is cheap, buy the product, or share the picture, or the statement, or whatever. Liking is cheap, right? So make sure you go get the that. As well, make sure you go to moorishcivilletter.net and go get Brother Abdullah's Moorish Connection to Masonry, right? So you don't get fooled as to what's going on in the world. Because serious times right now, information is coming out right now, serious time. And all this information that's coming out, been sitting there. The only problem is that we didn't know. Because we thought that, we're African people and we have this culture in Africa, right? And that's the motherland. When we're talking Asiatics of the planet, not breeds of people or races, Asiatics. And for who doesn't like it, I don't care. I'm going to tell you anyways. You better start respecting that European, stop calling him white man and hybrid and whatever, right? Because he knows time's up. That's why it's fake snow and stuff like that, because they're trying to preserve themselves. That's nothing to do with that, Yeah, it's mind-boggling that people are burning snow and there's no water, but somebody's doing that purposely for themselves, right? And it's just coming out that they've been doing that. People been talking about chemtrails and all that, so it's not nothing new. We're just somebody actually said, "Hey, let me burn the snow. See what I mean, could have been 10 years ago. Snow's been like that, right? So make sure you go out. All these people are using is our sciences. Trying to take us out or whatever, end up taking out yourself. And then make sure you go get Sabir Bay production, right, with Elder Taj Tariq Bey. Right, liking is cheap. Liking is cheap. There's the product. Go get something. Show some support. Stop fronting. Conscious people. Oh yeah. Since that, let's start. Since it's Black History Month, let's start with some black guys. Let's see what some black guys have to say. All right. And this is African-centered consciousness versus the New World Order. Garveyism in the age of globalism. Right? The master teacher, Amos Wilson. Make sure you go get the book. Liking's cheap. Right? We're going to go to page 120. Right? right? Remember, this is Amos Wilson now, Black Power guy. Everybody has this book or they have the other one, right? So let's not play around. It's Amos Wilson we're talking about right now, right? Page 120. If you have the book, you know what I mean, follow along. And also Islam to all the Moors out there worldwide. We got this, and we're bringing it home, right? And happy Black History Month to all you new people who probably just think Moors things is jokes or whatever like that, and think that we're not serious. We're sorry what some black people who you guys rep are saying. Page 120. The need for nation consciousness and vision. Amos Wilson. Many of the problems we suffer today are because we do not see ourselves as a nation. Hey, this is Amos Wilson. Let's just put everything on the record right now. Copyright 1999, African World Info Systems. Executive Editor, Sababu N. Plata. Assistant Editor, Adiza Makalani. Copy Editor, Raven Rowe. Graphics Illustrator, Joseph Gillians. Right? Most of the problems we suffer today are because we do not see ourselves as a nation. We complain about how we are segregated from everybody else, about how we are not part of the mainstream, how we are not part of the economy, how we are shut out from the government and the political process. If we are not a part of these things, and yet these things are what define a nation, then we are not a part of the American nation. Right now, this is where we start swaying into the, like Brother Seth and Rabe said, you put on your thinking cap and make sense out of nonsense when you hear black guys who have to put out books about our situation, and they have to. It's imperative that they play the black-white game when they write their books. Don't believe me? We're reading it right now. Right? Good. Right? Letting you know that we suffer our problems because we don't see ourselves as a nation, period. Okay, so Noble Drew Ali said that we're a nation, so okay, so we solved the problem. But nah, you don't want that. You want black history. You want to go swim in their swimming pool, man, putting acid on you and all that. So you can swim in his pool. And you have freaking ocean right over there. Right? That's where we got to. And if we think that everything that the Moors are putting out is something that's hidden away somewhere, and Moors just, are the ones that, this is, all this books and all this stuff that we go through is freaking elementary as far as our existence, who we are, what we're supposed to do on this planet and all that. All this information is minimal compared to what we're supposed to be, because, we're only using this little portion of our brain, and we're stunted. There's a lot more, right? So remember the sway, right, of having to talk from that black, white, African perspective to drive the point. But remember that when they say white, black, those are statuses, so don't even consider it that he's talking about people. And then secondly, when he says African, he's actually saying Moors, because Moors and African is synonymous, but they don't want you to know that. They want you to think that African is these guys over here and Moors are these guys over here, and they're separate, when it's just two terms for people that could be used interchangeably, right? So clear this up in our minds. So when we go back to reading all these books and we see white people, black people, and whatever, we can put it in the right context so we can understand what they're really saying and not get lost. If we are not a part of these things, and yet these things are what define a nation, then we are not a part of the American nation. That nation is a white nation. We are in effect a de facto nation, but now de facto is a law term, just so we are in effect a de facto nation, but we are afraid to recognize it. If we looked at ourselves as a nation, we'd see many of the reasons why we are where we are as a people. If we looked at ourselves as a nation, we would see why we have the problems we have. Why do we have some of the problems we have? For the same reason other African nations have the problems they have. Because we permit our resources, human and material, to be used by another people. We export them. We, like any other African nation, are an indebted nation. We are over-indebted. When talk about African nations suffering from being overburdened by debt, we don't recognize that we are talking about ourselves. If I ask here tonight, how many of us owe another black institution or another black person major debt, we would get very few hands. But if I ask how many of us owe a white person, a white institution, a non-African institution great debt, we'd all probably have to raise our hands. If you recognize this and add this up in terms of a nation, not just yourself as an individual, but if you look at all of us as individuals in terms of a nation, you will recognize that as a nation, we owe an enormous debt to other people. One of the reasons why we are poverty stricken is not because we don't have money. It's because all of our money is being used to service the debt that other nations own, that the white nation in America owns. Because we spend so much time paying our installment plans and paying our money out of these other nations of people, we cannot save our monies. We cannot accumulate our money and create wealth so that we can employ ourselves as a people, so that we can support our families as a people, so that we can build the schools we need to build to educate our children in the way we need to educate them as a people. Consequently, we have the similar problem with all African nations. We have the similar problem which all African nations have. Almost where they cannot build highways, railways, schools, hospitals, institutions, communications, and other systems because all of the wealth they are generating is being exported out to European nations and other nations to whom they owe debt. But you can see, but you can only see this when you look at yourself as a nation. When you look at yourself as a nation, you can see that you can change this problem by changing the debt relationship you have to other people. Right? Elder Amos Wilson. Okay? Letting you know that if you're not looking at yourself as a nation, you're playing around. And you deserve everything that you get. Right? So don't complain, just like you're saying, complaining, using certain words, de facto, putting you onto something. But if you don't have a law dictionary at your house, you read de facto, you just think he just said a word. Right? When he's actually speaking to you in law terms, that everybody says, oh, that's the white man stuff. And then say black power and all that. Right? European, who we give high honors to, William Cooper, because he dropped it on his own Roman's brethren's head. Dropped it on him. Right? He dropped it on him. That they had to murder him for the book. Right? They had to murder him because he wrote this book. And then they're gonna play these little games that, anti-government people and all that. When we're not anti-government, we're anti-pseudo-government. We're anti-color of law government. We're anti-government that are not republics, that push democracy as a form of government when that's not a form of government. That's a military operation of takeover, a military operation of rule by few who control nothing but own everything. right? They knew what they were dealing with. They knew exactly what they were dealing with, right? This is how they want to keep you away from Noble Drew Ali. Look how far ahead these people are thinking in order to keep you away from Noble Drew Ali, right? And don't forget, this is Bill Cooper, European, Behold a Pale Horse, right? Chapter 4, Secret Treaty of Verona, Precedent and Positive Proof of Conspiracy, Congressional Record, 1916, page 6781, and the American Diplomatic Code, Volume 2, 1778 to 1884, Elliott, page 179, 1916, Congressional Record, Senate. Mr. Owen, I wish to put on the record the secret treaty of Verona of November 22nd, 1822, showing what this ancient conflict is between the rule of the few and the rule of the many. I wish to call the attention of the Senate to this treaty because it is the threat of this treaty which was the basis of the Monroe Doctrine. It throws a powerful white light upon the conflict between monarchical government and government by the people. The Holy Alliance, under influence of Metternich, the Premier of Austria in 1822, issued this remarkable secret doctrine, American Diplomatic Code, 1778 to 1884. And 2 years later, Drali's born. Which would, because if he's a prophet, that would have been prophecy, which means everybody who's in the high orders of whatever, they knew he was going to be born. He wasn't a secret.
And this is the Treaty of Verona, you're saying?
The Treaty of Verona.
I thought it was a draft in 18-something.
1884.
When it was instituted?
1778 to 1884 is the diplomatic code. Right? The because remember that there was government here already.
What am I thinking with 1213? What was that?
There was government here already. Right?
I thought the Treaty of Verona was...
Secret Treaty of Verona is ancient.
Yeah, I thought that was 1213. Wasn't that something like that? I don't know.
No.
Older than that, you're saying?
November 22nd, 1822.
1822. So that's 40 years before.
Right? Now, remember that there was already stuff going on over here.
Mm-hmm.
Just like with Amos Wilson,
Mm-hmm.
when they talk about American codes, they're talking about U.S. and all that. They're talking about the Republic. And the purpose of the Treaty of Verona was to get all the republics in the Americas eliminated.
Yeah.
Right? Them instituting that plan, just like they say, slavery had a start and an end.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They always use the double date. Because they're not expecting us, don't forget, everybody knows this.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to reframe ourselves to thinking that when we're going through this historical information,
Mm-hmm.
that we're not thinking about Europeans. We're thinking about our governments.
I see what you're saying.
And the Europeans are the ones trying to take over our governments.
You're talking about that's a perspective that
we need to be on.
Yeah.
Because we always go back like new people, not adepts. But people who are coming into this information, right, are going back to the Constitution, for example, right? But they're going back to the Constitution with the mindset absent of the Continental Congress. They don't even know that that's connected. They don't even know that indigenous culture is connected to the U.S. Constitution. They're just looking at it as these Europeans that said that they're the United States of America, and when that's later.
It's interesting, when I start to think about things, when I think about, when I got to a level where they were starting to teach me history, it seems that history only started here in the 1600s when they talk about this boat coming over,
Right,
right? And so you don't get any perspective on anything else because history is only that from that perspective.
exactly.
So and then when it steps, so once you've got that basis of that, then when it steps forward to talk about everything else, and then what they talk about is they talk about the Indian
Yeah.
they met here.
Yeah,
So that disconnects it from you too.
right.
So you're not, because they're not even really putting any relevance on that either, right? Because when you're in that schools, they're not even really
Yeah, they're not going
expounding on
there.
that
Yeah,
on
yeah,
stuff. They're just
yeah.
talking about these battles.
Right.
But then what happens when they step into the American culture and they talk about George Washington, they're then sort of placing history starting
Right. At those points.
well,
Right.
at that point.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, what I realized, I was talking to a brother today, maybe we'll talk about another point, but I realized that 90% of it is that we accept what they told us, and no one's really doing any extracurricular studying. But I think a big part of that reason is because there's no benefit to that to us relative to the situation we're in.
Right. Right.
Right?
Right.
When
Right.
history teacher gives you this thing to do for your course or any of it, it all has to do with their stuff.
Right. But
So
still, when, like, okay, for example,
yeah.
it all has to do with their stuff, right? Their stuff is our stuff,
No, I agree, but from their
right?
perspective.
But from their perspective,
Right.
right? We can't use their stuff from their perspective.
No,
Just
100%.
like the sovereignty, whatever.
Right.
You can't see a sovereignty guy use something and then adopt it how he used it.
That's right.
You're gonna have to put your Moorish thinking cap on,
Right.
right?
Well, it comes from a totally different perspective.
Exactly. So we have to go back and clear up the perspective with regard to things so that things could fall in line.
No, 100%. But I just realized it came to me today as to why we haven't woken up. Well, there's lots of reasons for that, but I realize why the average person, until they get to that level of, let's say, higher study, university per se, that everything else is sort of on this very base thing. And when you're just trying to get your little A's and B's, it's all from that perspective, right? And you ain't getting any marks for finding out who was before George Washington.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean?
They'll fail you for that.
Well,
Yeah.
that's right. You put in anything
Yeah.
extra, and you're failing, right? So to me, what I realize is how sinister and devious yet again it still is, right? Because they're still qualifying any information that you get from their perspective.
See, right, but this is why, right? This is why one of the promos that we did today was Moorish connection to Masonry, so that people can have a clear perspective as to what our stuff is and what they adopted, not what their stuff is, right? Like going back and getting everything back, because we have to recheck everything now. Because even when we were conscious, we were looking at things warped, and we're supposed to be conscious. Like how many people out there that are conscious people, right? That talk about the same thing, just like Amos was, complaining about this and complaining about how come they don't, right?
So
How many of them know about Treaty of Verona,
yeah, I realize that. I
right?
mean, that's why I came into this movement. I knew something was wrong, but it was always from a perspective of racism,
right? And
versus heritage.
right, right. So they have a perspective of secret Treaty of Verona that was some white man treaty. Yeah, it was a white man treaty to dethrone you.
Well, that's
It's
Treaty of
not just a
Verona.
white
The
man
first time I
treaty,
ever heard of it coming to this.
right?
So to me, Treaty of Verona is stuff that's still pretty much, I think, fairly.
Right. The undersigned, specially authorized to make some additions to the Treaty of the Holy Alliance after having exchanged their respective credentials and have agreed as follows. 1. The high contracting powers being convinced that the system of representative government is equally as incompatible with the monarchical principles as the maxim of the sovereignty of the people with the divine right, engage mutually in the most solemn manner to use all their efforts to put an end to the system of representative governments in whatever country it may exist in Europe, and to prevent it being introduced into those countries where it is not yet known. Article 2. As it cannot be doubted that the liberty of the press is the most powerful means used by the precedented supporters of the rights of nations to the detriment of those princes, the high contracting parties promise reciprocally to adopt all proper measures to suppress it, not only in their own states, but also in the rest of Europe. Article 3. Convinced that the principles of religion contribute most powerfully to keep nations in the state of passive obedience, which they owe to their princes, the high contracting parties declare it to be their intention to sustain in their respective states those measures which the clergy may adopt, with the aim of ameliorating their own interests, so intimately connected with the preservation of the authority of the princes, and the contracting powers join in offering their thanks to the Pope for what he has already done for them, and solicit his constant cooperation in their views of submitting the nations. Article 4. The situation of Spain and Portugal unite unhappily all the circumstances to which this treaty has particular reference. The high contracting parties, in confiding to France the care of putting an end to them, engage to assist her in the manner which may the least compromit them to their own people and the people of France by means of a subsidy on the part of the two empires of 20 million francs every year from the date of the signature of this treaty to the end of the war. Article 5. In order to establish in the peninsula the order of things which existed before the revolution of Cadiz, and to ensure the entire execution of the articles of the present treaty, the high contracting parties give to each other the reciprocal assurance that as long as their views are not fulfilled, rejecting all other ideas of utility or other measure to be taken, they will address themselves with the shortest possible delay to all the authorities existing in their states, and to all their agents in foreign countries, with the view to establish connections tending toward the accomplishment of the objects proposed by this treaty. Article 6. This treaty shall be renewed with such changes as new circumstances may give occasion for, either at a new Congress or at the court of one of the contracting parties, as soon as the war with Spain shall be terminated. Article 7. The present treaty shall be ratified and the ratifications exchanged at Paris within the space of 6 months. Made at Verona, the 22nd November 1822, from Austria Metternich, from France Chateaubriand, from Prussia Bernstedt, from Russia Nesserode. Mr. Owen, I ask to have printed in the Congressional Record this secret treaty because I think it is ought to be called now to the attention of the people of the United States and of the world. This evidence of the conflict between the rule of the few versus popular government should be emphasized in the minds of the people of the United States, that the conflict now waging throughout the world may be more clearly understood, for after all said, the great pending war springs from the weakness and frailty of government by the few, where human error is far more probable than the error of the many, where aggressive war is only permitted upon the authorizing vote of those whose lives are jeopardized in the trenches of modern war. Mr. Shafroth, Mr. President, I should like to have the Senator state whether, in that treaty, there was not a coalition formed between the powerful countries of Europe to re-establish the sovereignty of Spain in the republics of South and Central America. Mr. Owen,
Just wanted to show you something for half a second. Because I knew I was right. I think that that bases from on one even earlier than that. See down, see the
Secret Treaty of Verona, 12,
13. Remember,
13.
because I remember us talking about this. This is what Todd was saying in one of his
King
messages,
John
right? That
as a
was the
king.
beginning of it. I think the one that you're talking about, I could be wrong.
Could be right too. Let's see.
I think that was the basis of it, right?
I never came up.
Okay, I'll check it. But that's what I'm.
Yeah, if you pull it up,
Yeah.
so we could put that out there
Yeah.
too. I was just going to comment upon that. I'm going to take but a few moments to do so because I realize the pressure of other matters. This Holy Alliance, having put a Bourbon prince upon the throne of France by force, then used France to suppress the constitution of Spain immediately afterwards, and by this very treaty gave her a subsidy of 20 million francs annually to enable her to wage war upon the people of Spain and prevent their exercise of any measure of the right of self-government. You got that?
No.
Okay. The Holy Alliance immediately did the same thing in Italy by sending Austrian troops to Italy, where the people there attempted to exercise a like measure of liberal constitutional self-government. And it was not until the printing press, which the Holy Alliance so stoutly opposed, taught the people of Europe the value of liberty, that finally one country after another seized the greater and greater right of self-government until now, it may be fairly said that nearly all the nations of Europe have a very large measure of self-government. However, I wish to call attention of the Senate and the country to this important history in the growth of constitutional popular self-government. The Holy Alliance made its powers felt by the wholesale drastic suppression of the press in Europe, by universal censorship, by killing free speech and all ideas of popular rights, and by the complete suppression of popular government. The Holy Alliance, having destroyed popular government in Spain and in Italy, had well laid plans also to destroy popular government in the American colonies, which had revolted from Spain to Portugal in Central and South America under the influence of the successful example of the United States.
Found it.
It was because of this conspiracy against the American republics by the European monarchies that the great English statesman Canning called the attention of our government to it, and our statesmen then, including Thomas Jefferson, took an active part in to bring about the declaration by President Monroe in his annual message to Congress of the United States that the United States would regard it as an act of hostility to the government of the United States and an unfriendly act if this coalition, or if any power of Europe, ever undertook to establish upon the American continent any control of any American republic or to acquire any territorial rights. This is the so-called Monroe Doctrine. The threat under the secret Treaty of Verona to suppress popular government in the American republics is the basis of the Monroe Doctrine. This secret treaty sets forth clearly the conflict between monarchical government and popular government and the government of the few against the government of the many. It is a part in reality of developing popular sovereignty when we demand for women's equal rights to life, to liberty, to the possession of property, to an equal voice in making the laws and the administration of the laws. This demand on the part of the woman is made by men, and it ought to be made by men as well as by thinking progressive women, as it will promote human liberty and human happiness. I sympathize with it, and I hope that all parties will in the national conventions give their approval to this larger measure of liberty to the better half of the human race. Author's note: anyone who believes that the monarchs after being deposed forgave and forgot is not playing with a full deck. Most of these families are wealthy beyond belief and may be more powerful today than when they sat upon thrones. Today they are known collectively as the black nobility. Just because the secret Treaty of Verona was signed in 1822 does not mean that the treaty is void. It is imperative that you realize that privately, the black nobility refuses to ever recognize any government other than their own inherited and divine right to rule. They work diligently behind the scenes to cause conditions whereby they might regain their crowns. They believe that the United States belongs to England. Right, you got it there?
This is crazy because yeah. You should read the top part, and then I don't know. You could read the sort of the whole thing in, but it's really kind of deep.
Right.
Read from even the top there, right? Right from the top.
Once upon a time, before the year 1066, the people of England held a allodial title to their land. Not even the king could take the land for not paying the tithe. William the Conqueror came in 1066 and stole the king's title and took the land of the people. From William I, 1066, to King John, 1199, England was in dire straits. It was bankrupt. The king invoked the law of mortmain, the dead man's hand. Mortmain is Mortmain, the dead man's hand. So people couldn't pass their land onto the church or anyone else without the king's permission. Modern day probate. Without mortmain, the king would lose the land he controlled. The Vatican didn't like that because the king owned a lot of pounds to the Vatican. King John refused to accept the Vatican's representative, Stephen Langton, whom Pope Innocent III installed to rule England. In 1208, England was placed under papal interdict. Interdict means prohibition. King John was excommunicated, and in trying to regain his stature, he groveled before the Pope and returned the title to his kingdoms of England and Ireland to the Pope as vassals, and swore submission and loyalty to him. That sounds just like HJR 192 and them giving up whatever they got, which is the property of the people, being the property to the international bankers to get out of their debt.
That's what's HR? That's like a law or a clause or something.
Yeah,
or?
that was the bankruptcy.
Okay, but
Of
keep
the
going on
United
because what
States.
you realize this is the basis for where we're at now. Because remember, if England owns here, then what you're going to see is who owns England. You can read down even further because
Yeah.
you can jump down because it says something about people going to natives, to native coming over to America to take the natives. You see that as you go down further down. It's like a couple of.
Okay, I think so.
Maybe you just want to jump down because maybe you want to stay on point. But
Yeah.
but I think that this is where they're saying the beginning. But it says something about the natives there. Like if you want.
Okay, the contract, Treaty of 1213, was between two parties. Now the barons of England would not put up with being slaves anymore, so they took the sword and made King John sign the Magna Carta. So doesn't this act of the barons violate the principle of natural law when they created the Magna Carta as having no force and effect upon a contract between two parties? Pope Innocent III, the other contracting party, thought so, for he declared that the Magna Carta to be unlawful and unjust, as it is base and shameful, whereby the apostolic see is brought into contempt, the royal prerogative diminished, the English outraged, and the whole enterprise of the crusade greatly imperiled. Quoted from G.R.C. Davis, Magna Carta, trustee of the British Museum, London, 1965. The king's explorers had come to America to claim dominion over the land by deceiving and murdering the natives, the American Indians. The king, so the blacks, the black blacks. The king operated under the Treaty of 1213, and everything was going along okay until 1770s when the bunch of rogues called the Founding Fathers decided they wanted the benefits but not to pay taxes to the king. They, being lawyers and professional educated men, didn't know they were still under the Pope's control. Their lies and fraud now would affect the American colonies and the people who lived on the land. Those common people who fought in the American Revolution were unaware that the 1213 Treaty still ruled despite the fact they thought the Magna Carta was a viable piece of work. The Declaration of Rights in 1689 declared the rights of British subjects in England. At the end of the English Declaration, it stated at Section 3 that should any of the rights just mentioned be in violation of the Holy Alliance, it is as if this declaration was never written.
So I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But that
yeah.
sort of. There's definitely. I mean, Well, there would probably need to be further study, but somewhere in there,
Yeah, so
and you can probably read between the lines.
well, there's the treaty, whatever treaty it is from 1213,
Right.
led up to
this one here.
the Treaty of Verona.
Verona.
Yeah,
But it's interesting. That's what when I punched in Treaty of Verona.
yeah. That's
where they say the beginning of all this is. Right. And as I said in one of those videos, I specifically remember him. I specifically remember him saying that it was the 1213 treaty.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Okay, so these people have game plan. They're not just going on a whim because, you know,
Treaty of this, treaty of that.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like they know what they're dealing with, right? Okay. And our thing is getting the people out of the dogma mentality that history is white man stuff. Like especially things relating to treaties and papal bulls and things of that nature, right? Because all those things are leading back to this conflict.
A lot of our people
between
think we were slaves.
The Asiatics and yeah,
they're in a stupor,
right? But speaking about them and their stupor, right? Because it's also um, we also have to keep in mind with the people, because like phones phones going off, how calls are coming in, like phones going off. Like it's not even funny how calls just calls. You know what I mean? Just people just heard something, listened to some blog talker, saw something on YouTube, and they're not, like when Drew Ali said they're coming in with their eyes open. Like we have people who are like Reiki practitioners coming in. Like that's what they do. You know what I mean? Right?
They want to come.
Yeah, the wheels are turning right now on a different level, right? Because they're not coming in, you know, they're not coming in dumb, right? Like even the brother off the streets coming in knowing that, compass and squares and Illuminati and whatever, at least that. At least that. And that's a big start. If you know that, you're pretty much there already. Because the symbol is telling you 10,000 words, you're not even reading, you're just looking at the symbol, right? Which leads us to the Psych War, right, by Larue Nudd. A little booklet that, just floating around. And don't forget, black means pale. So we look at it at two levels. We could look at it like this is against those people, just like when you said the black nobility. And everybody's looking at the black nobility as the black people who ruled Europe. No, the black people who ruled Europe were Moors. And they're known as a white brotherhood. They're not known as no black nothing. The black nobility is European. That's what don't forget, he murdered a man for the book. He specifically said the black nobility. But he's not talking about people who look like us. He's talking about Europeans, calling them black.
Yeah, but like you're saying, you could even call them black on the level of their intent.
Remember, he said that they're known. That's not just based on intent. They're known as the black people.
Okay.
Yeah, their intent as well. That's why they're black.
Yeah.
Page 22. Summary and main points. 1. We are under psychological attack. We are involved in a psych war, whether we know it or not. The proof can be seen in the amount of casualties we see in the black community. If we do not see the attack, we will not react to it properly. It appears as though it is black people waging war on black people. Right? The reason why I kick dirty Moore's asses, because that's what the problem is.
So read that last part again, the little last.
It appears as though it is black people waging war on black people, right? Like, that's what it is, right? Okay. If the problems of the black community continue to get worse and worse, it will end in the physical destruction of black people in America, right? Now remember, you look at it like black people, right? If there are chemtrails out there, that affects everybody, Europeans too. And then they say Europeans did the chemtrails. Okay. Europeans the black guy, then that's black on black crime. We're just caught up in it because we're here, we there too. Rabbit's caught up on it, but it's not rabbit versus the European. You know what I mean? You know, right? All human action is a product of the mind. The actions of the race are initiated through the mind of the race. Self-destruction is not a part of our nature or our true mind. Therefore, self-destruction can be removed. Everyone wants to live and be happy. The mind is directly influenced by the education it receives. The education we now receive is controlled by a race of people who have a long history of doing things to black people that they would not like done to themselves. White people know what effect their education will have on black people. In nature, no group of species of animal depends upon another group or species of animal for its education. It is not natural for black people to depend on white people for our education. The major influences on our minds are church, school, television, music, books, and magazines, other people, and thinking. Our only self-defense is to take charge of our own education. Our self-education must occur on A, an individual level, B, the family level, and C, the institutional level. We need to learn about the laws of the universe, nature, science, body, and mind. We need to learn about our history in America and Africa. We need to learn about our original cultures and languages. The survival of the race and its individual members depends on this type of education. The bottom line to our physical survival and happiness is money. We must develop economic unity for black people and not just a few black individuals. We must develop businesses that mass produce goods and services and that will support our own educational institutions. We must develop a philosophy and campaign specifically for black people to promote nonviolence in our families and communities because we suffer disproportionately in these areas. Violence can occur in two ways, physical and verbal. Verbal violence leads to physical violence. How can we attack each other in the face of a common enemy? Our ability to work together is what makes us a strong and healthy people. Before the Emancipation Proclamation, our foreparents were not slaves. Therefore, we are not the descendants of slaves. If we do not turn the disproportionate suffering around within this generation, the race will not continue to physically survive. Amani na uweza, peace and power. Right. Then from there, we're just gonna we talked about universal laws. So we're just gonna lead up to universal laws with, don't forget liking is cheap. So no liking, just go buy the book. First World Order, Lee Malbay, and get off his website. Page 339, taken from Science of Healing by Malachi Z. York L. Malachi Z. York L.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say you had the L at the end,
not
right?
the not the York only, right? The L one, the more, right? The six-point star is a symbol as ancient as time itself, having been utilized by the elders who walked with men in Genesis 6 in the days of Nu. The elders were the teachers who formed the first mystery schools of learning to teach the children of earth. The center of the six-point star symbolizes the spinal cord. The crescent symbolizes the crown and its divine contents. For lying within the brain is the radiant kingdom of Allahu Subhanahu wa Ta'ala within man. The sustainer of this realm is the pineal gland, the lamb, and he is surrounded by his 12 disciples, or the 12 convolutions of the brain, or the 12 spiritual centers in the brain that relate to the 12 major pairs of cranial nerves which pass from under the surface of the brain through the openings of the cranius to reach the organs in the man's body. At present, there are normally only a few of these 12 spiritual centers opened or active, affecting man's daily life. As man progresses spiritually, tiny valves leading up to the spinal column open one by one. Eventually, he spiritualizes the last three pairs of nerves, which in turn open the 12 spiritual centers of force in the brain and flood the physical form with the spiritual power and awareness, changing him from man to son of Allah. The 12 cranial nerves have a counterpart, 12 positive and 12 negative, which gives a total of 24. This coincides with the 24 elders that sat on the throne. So we know that Moors are scientists. We don't do the, you know what I mean, worship. We don't do the, we don't do the worship at all, right? We're not on that. We're on raising ourselves to higher levels of existence so we can manifest for real on the earth plane, right? Go back to the minds of our ancient foremothers and forefathers. Right? Next one, MST of 8 degrees, Moore's Order of the Round Table by Todd Philip Bay, rvbaypublications.com. You can get it from there. 7 Hermetic Principles. Much of the present-day ignorance and misunderstandings of true spirituality, history, anthropology, linguistics, astrology, cosmology, and other ancient sciences and disciplines have been due to European Inquisition operation in the Western Hemisphere and across the planet. Nature embodies and hides in her bosom the greatest secrets of life, and the one who applies the instructions they give as those who have ascended to the Christ degrees or higher Gnostic levels of understanding, then nature reflects upon you like a child of her own, and you can read her like an open book. Thus the veils of all the holy books take on new and more useful pragmatic meanings. The astrological projections, the cosmological philosophies, and the moral and ethical lessons become clearer in purpose and in function. You will gain new meaning to the phrase, learn to love instead of hate. The holy books that have been often misrepresented to the masses become useful tools even to the least of us. Thus, the veiled secrets of the Holy Quran, the Septuagint, the derived Bible, the Torah, the Hexateuch, the Vedas, the Yoga philosophies, the Kabbalah, and the ancient philosophies associated with them shall no longer be mysterious and vague. All of these will begin to take on new light and become unveiled as relative journals. The profiteering mystery makers, usually dressed in holy garb, will lose their misused power to weave fears, guilt, and superstition on people. They will be forced to become honest or will find themselves shunned by the people. Veiled truth is something relegated to the contradictory nature mystery, which is misunderstanding. The lack of understanding has been referred to as being blind or blindness. Learn of these 7 principles and precepts and clear away obstacles from many paths of learning. These principles are key to enlightenment, especially for those who walk the path of humanitarian progressions, ascension, and liberation. Let these become new tools for the mind. The studies and application of these principles are the true hidden philosophical basis for most of the world's religions. The study of these Hermetic principles constitutes a master key to all phenomena and thus opens the door to all knowledge. For those who are preparing or being prepared for the new era of time, here are the 7 Hermetic principles. The 7 Hermetic principles: mind. All is mind, everything is energy. The universe is mental. Correspondence. As it is above, so it is below. As it is below, so it is above. Vibration. Nothing is stationary. Everything vibrates. Polarity. Everything is double. Everything has its opposite extremes meet. Rhythm. All is ebb and flow. Action and reaction. Advance and recoil. Cause and effect. Nothing happens by chance. Everything happens according to the law. Generation. Generation is manifestation in everything. Everything is masculine and feminine. Elohim, the holy names of the 7 days. Sunday is the first day of the week, is ruled by the sun. The holy name of Sunday is Mikael. Monday is the second day of the week. It is ruled by the moon. The holy name of Monday is Gabriel. Tuesday is the third day of the week. It is ruled by Mars. The holy name of Tuesday is Zamael. Wednesday is the fourth day of the week. It is ruled by Mercury. The holy name of Wednesday is Raphael. Thursday is the fifth day of the week. It is ruled by Jupiter. The holy name of Thursday is Sachiel. Friday is the sixth day of the week. It is ruled by Venus. The holy name of Friday is Anael. Saturday is the seventh day of the week. It is ruled by Saturn. The holy name of Saturday is Cassiel. Um, so, as we see, true religion is understanding universal laws. Not playing around with the laws, because when you go against the laws, stuff happens to people, right? Because the laws are the laws are there, you know what I mean, for a reason, right? Just gonna go through some spiritual stuff today, right? On the secret book, Sons of the Green Light, right? Yeah, Sons of the Green Light, lesson 1, right? Again, Malachi, you gotta,
Is that him who wrote this? Nortel.
yeah, you know what I mean? The Adept, the Adept R&B singer, yeah. The Adept R&B singer. But they drop some stuff still. Page 35. A sea of ignorance has sprouted a new spirit, flesh yet not mortal, a master of divine ancestry, a product of a celestial realm, a miraculous embodiment endowed with the ability to manifest a flow of pure and exhaustible love grace that transcends all conditions of El Kadari karma. An axis, a spiritual guide likened unto the 16-petal lotus, symbolic of fertility and reincarnation. A rising is in order, a rising of the order of the sons of the green light, a rebirth of the mystical school, like a lotus sprouting beneath the water, then emerging to the surface, unfolding and reaching towards the sun. One formless form incarnated with a clear consciousness of past, present, and future, guided by a spirit that spoke of his coming. A divinely incarnated temple of wisdom has come forth, in reply to your call for assistance, giving you what you want so you can learn what you want he has to give. I do not belong to any place. I am not attached to any name. I have no me or you. I answer wherever and go wherever. Your privilege, your honor, and your chance to attune yourself to the cosmic, the universal all is now. By the glory of the omnipotent, a cosmic visitor has descended to share with you a new way, the way of divine love, the answer to all humanity's problems. That sound real similar to something Noble Ali would say. Real familiar. Sounds real familiar to something Noble Ali would say. You know. And since we bring up drop profit. Since we bring up the prophet, we might as well go to the Nuwapian Nation of Moors, Holy Quran of the Moor Science Temple, hardcover, right? With the 7 there, and then the flag right there on the bottom. You know, unfortunately, the star rubbed off. I use this book a lot, so you know. But
But it's not the same as ours.
oh yeah, yeah, it's the same. It's the same. Yeah, that's why I held it up like that because we did the eyebrows. You know, why would they have? Why would they have this? Why would it be hardcover? They must have made up their own. Like why would they? Why would Malachi York take his time and energy
Right.
to put out a Noble Drew Ali book? Hardcover. Right? And they're going to say they have nothing to do with this. But he also said he had nothing to do with this. That's why he's where he's at, because go against the prophet. After you do something like this, you go against the prophet. Hardcover. Like there's no more of these in existence. Unless there's some Nuwapians that have them in secret. Right? But I got this from the Moor, who was a Nuwapian, right, in Atlanta, whose store was closing down. He was just giving stuff away. And he's like, yo, I have 2 of these, my personals. And he big blown up. He big blown up. Just because the Moor was asking for it. Because he wasn't about to give this to no Nuwapian. The last 2 in existence. He's like, you know, people gave me, people said wads for this. He had like, he had he had everything. He was probably like just the guy that was the store for the Nuwapians in Atlanta. When he was shutting down, he gave everything away.
But their movement has become disbanded?
I wouldn't say disbanded. They're still out there doing what they do, but you know, they're not on this, right? Religious controversy. In this age, there is still much religious controversy as to the right thing. Big and powerful ministers have come to the conclusion that something is wrong. Some say it is the 10 Commandments. Others, there is a lack of sincerity in the purpose of the churches. Still, others think it is all worthless and not for the time it takes to attend them. However, or whatever their final decision might be, it is certain they will make a change, or rather try to make one. The fact of the matter is that they have always had only a reflection of the truth and not the real thing. Like one who holds up a sun to a sun, like one who holds up to the sun a mirror and casts a few of its diverted rays in a different direction. So have they done with truth that is supposed to have come from the east. There are but few people who know what the truth is about man, and that few know that it is foolish to try to impart it to the ignorant. Although the ignorant has finished college, he is a fool right on, being trained to jump through a hoop. The longer he stays in the schools, the better he can jump, and the more vivid he will defend his jumping. From the east comes all light, but though the sun is hanging at high noon, the blind cannot see. The same is the Islamic creed from Asia, was brought to the Asiatics of America by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and offered to those who were sick at heart, tried for many years, yet they are blind and cannot see the light. Nor is the Prophet trying to put new wine in old skins, for he knows that it will burst them. He still he has the only remedy for the nations, the remedy brought by Isa, Muhammad, Confucius, and all of the other prophets, which remedy truth. The nations, remember Dr. Amos Wilson, the nations do not want the truth. It is too stern. But until they accept it and find out where it is, there will continue to be religious controversy. right? Because all that has to be put out there is the truth.
Yeah.
When you
Too
put the
much
truth
for them.
out, when they hear truth, they're running,
They operate on lies and
right?
deception.
Yeah.
I have to say though, with that Quran being the way that it is, to
Quran's
me,
on your mind, huh?
no, it's not that, because I expected the Quran to sort of mimic the other Holy Quran, but this is obviously his rendition of it.
No, that's writings of the Prophet that he put with the Quran.
That's writings of the Prophet
Yeah.
and put with the Quran.
Yeah,
Oh.
right? Like he's trying to preserve something that was lost. So he put it all together,
Right.
right? So you have
It's a straight noble truth.
right. So you have index, chapter 1, creation and fall of man.
Yeah, chapter
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Whatever, 50, right? Or
Yeah.
49 or something, right? And then
Okay.
what? And then
And then after that, end of time, fulfilling of prophecies. That's the last chapter in the circle 7.
right.
And then creation, fall of man starts. And then the index, right, doesn't say anything about after the end and time of fall of prophecies, that there's something after. But when you go after,
It's chapter 1.
right, so there's end of time and fulfilling
So,
of prophecies.
in the index, that's the last.
In the index, this is the last
Yeah.
chapter. So the book's supposed to be finished from here.
Right. Supposed to be.
Okay, it's supposed to be finished. But then what he did is that he put the Moorish literature with the circle 7. So there can't be any dispute with anybody about what his position was.
Right.
Because he never put out no Elijah Muhammad books, hardcover. He never put out no Garvey books, hardcover. He never put out no Imam Isa books, hardcover.
No, I'm just looking at what I'm looking at. As obviously his intent, right? Because he obviously intended to as you say, to camelback off the prophet, right? Not camelback, but to, to expose the prophet's teachings, right?
Yeah. That was his plan. That was straight his plan. Right. This Holy Quran Circle 7 has been divinely prepared by the noble prophet Drew Ali, born January 8, 1886 AD and died on July 20th, 1929, which includes the lessons, was put out by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. I, Dr. Malachi Z. York,
That's it. No,
founder of the ancient mystic order of Melchizedek and Grand Master of HTM, in the effort to further uplift my Moorish American brothers and sisters who continue to spread the truth and unity amongst my Nubian brothers and sisters. Bridging the gap, right? Because he refers to himself as Nubian. All right. The Holy Quran Circle 7 is not to be mistaken for the Quran, the holy book of the Eastern Islamic world, that of the Prophet Mustafa Muhammad Alamin 570 to 632 AD of Arabia received, also called the Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah. This is not what Prophet Noble Drew Ali intended it to be mistaken as. There was another Muhammad called Mehmed the first who ruled in 1413 AD. Then you have his son Murad II, and then blah, then you talk, and of Jerusalem, the Turkish Ottoman Empire, not just Turkish Empire or the Ottoman Empire. It's like Black and Moorish, it's synonymous. Turkey and then all that is Moroccan Empire, right? Which covered from Istanbul to Yemen, which included Mecca from Egypt to Baghdad between 1359 1520 AD. They were descendants of Uthman, third Sunni Wabi Khalifa married two daughters, as descendants of Muhammad, and he goes on into the. This Holy Quran Circle 7 was compiled and put out in collaboration with Brother Eloah A. L. Emmanuel, a member of the Morris Science Temple since his birth of a family, of the original and registered on April 25th, 1976 AD by the Moorish School of Law and History. Grand Sheikh Richardson Dingle L., certified, sealed, and signed by Divine Minister Sheikh Alfred Collins L., and Director of the National Registrar Sheikh Clarence R. Reynolds L. I release this with total sincerity in hopes to keep the legacy of the Morris Science Temple of America alive. 1996. Dr. York, today's class is not just circular logic, right? But dogmatic circular logic. Impenetrable dogmatic circular logic. That you continuously put the cart before the horse, and everybody's telling you that's not the way to do it, and you still want to put the cart before the horse. You have ants freaking putting the horse and then putting the tire. You want to play around. If you want to play, like we just did. Amari just did the nationality card, no tax. Like what's the issue? Got some freedom, you bog down or whatever. Okay, nationalize. Videos out there for everybody to see. But what you're gonna do. What you can do is just get the word out. People are waking up. You know what I'm saying. And not to say that, you just do it just because, no taxes, wow, okay, I'm going to go do this. Like, no, that's not. We're just showing you that that's how real it is.
Well, that to me is the fear of this, though, that people will be looking to do that for that reason.
No, but then when they get judgment, that's on them. Because you're not supposed to come into this and do nothing premature. If you say, I self-law master, you better be able to, and then fire comes. Because there's no fire, like, hey, what you try to pull, right? GCF Grumbine, Grumbine, the secret doctrine of the order of Melchizedek. This is when these books came about, when you realize that there's a circular logic that you have to get over. You know what I mean? That it's not just about just things out here. There must be like something higher, spiritual or something. Like it can't be just this only. There must be something higher. So this is when I started getting into these kind of books. Right. So the key, how applied divine realization and illumination. Mysticism leads to divine realization and illumination. Its supreme purpose is to clear the consciousness of all veils, shadows, mists, obsessions, inhibitions, habits, prejudices, objective and subjective obstructions which deflect but do not reflect divinity. Right? Go again. Right? Mysticism leads to divine realization and illumination. Its supreme purpose, mysticism, right? Its supreme purpose is to clear the consciousness of all veils, shadows, mists, obsessions, inhibitions, habits, prejudices, objective and subjective obstructions which deflect but do not reflect divinity. A realization of one's own divinity is tantamount to the attainment of God consciousness. which is known and defined by Eastern mystics as the super consciousness, because it is paramount to all other forms of it. The secret doctrine would not be either secret or sacred were it to divulge knowledge which could attain the charlatan or magician. Therein lie its safeguard and peculiarity. The knowledge it reveals is super normalism plus mysticism. A free use of supernormal powers employed for personal or selfish purposes is possible and practical, but it leads to the blind alley of spiritual occultation. Such use of our powers is discouraged, if for no other reason than that it frequently leads to dementia. Persons, not students, who defy scientific and divine warnings of seers, psychological experts, and teachers of mysticism, and refuse to obey conditions, rushing into where angels fear to tread, have no one have no one to blame for themselves for the disasters which overtake them. The secret doctrine is exact and severe in demanding the spiritual life as of paramount importance among students of occult science, experimenters, demonstrators. This life is impersonal, universal, cosmic, and the foundation on which is built the conscious perception of spiritual revelation, divine realization, and illumination. Supernormalism is not mediumship. It affirms self-possession, freedom, and conscious sovereignty against obsession, control, and unconscious dependency. Supernaturalism is impli- used by theologians implies an accidental or sporadic happening impossible under natural and spiritual law, traceable to an alleged fiat of God to whom spontaneity of action is a privilege inexplicable to human reasoning, even in the absolute perfection of divine will. Evolution in a divine sense implies involution. It does not deny the innate potential ultimate perfection of the soul. Creation suggests recreation as generation, regeneration, and death and resurrection. Supernormalism signifies no accidental fiat of God, because his eternal plan failed, or because the soul from birth and manner could and would not save itself from ignorance, weakness, sin, and sickness, as does the word supernaturalism, but affirms the enfolding, involved potentialities of divine being, which when expressed proves one's divinity and mystically associates man with God. So there's a level and levels of attainment, and with us being on the higher side, right? We have a duty to see these things how they are and impart it to the ignorant for their upliftment. Because we have to put our hand in the grave and pull them out. They're not going to be doing you don't have to go in the grave, but you got to at least stretch your hand, right? And all these things is like true religion, brotherhood, right? 101 questionnaire. Question 64. Give 5 names that are given to the descendants of Adam and Eve: Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast. 65. What is the devil sometimes called? The lower self. 66. How many selves are there? 2. 67. Name them. Higher self and lower self. 68. What people represent the higher self? The angels who protect the holy city of Mecca. 69. What people represent the lower self? Those who were cast out of the holy city and those who accept their teaching. 70. What is the higher self? The higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life and breeds justice, mercy, love, and right. Can the higher self pass away? No. Why? Because it is Allah in man. Same thing Melchizedek just said, which is the secret doctrine. And then Noble Drawley put a little pamphlet so everybody could have access to it. But then you have people can't get this. They can't get Circle 7. They can't get like the immediate stuff that we're just supposed to be giving to you.
Yeah.
They can't even get those stuff. Because they want to get people stuck in that circle of logic, right? For example, buddy, these buddies that like to diss Noble Drew Ali and talk about plagiarism and all this stuff, and he's copying stuff, right? So the Red Book, right, is just like how Malachi York put stuff together, right? Circle 7 and Red Book goes together, right? But then if you make it two books now, then you have control. And Red Book was supposed to be in the attic chamber, not come out of the attic chamber. Because of people, certain people that Dirty Moors don't like, Red Book's now available to everybody, so they can know the same thing.
Dirty Moors don't like. Oh,
Yeah.
you mean good Moors?
Yeah,
Took that out.
that's the only Moors that Dirty Moors don't like.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I was wondering why you were qualifying the Dirty Moors.
Yeah, well, we have to be clear, because those guys,
Yeah,
they do the shapeshifting.
yeah.
They do the shapeshifting, right? Um, so he has put out information, right? Certain level of information. Noble Drew Ali. And then there's some European that put out information, which is identical to what Noble Drew Ali put out, right? So now these guys, these buddies, right? Call themselves conscious and whatever. They're really gonna say that a European could tap into the Akashic records and retrieve this book, and Noble Drew Ali plagiarized the European. That's their approach. Circular logic. Cart before the horse, pushing the cart into the horse. Right?
Are you connecting that to the book or not? The Aquarian Gospel.
The Aquarian Gospel, Levi Dowling.
But is that the reference that you're making?
Yeah, to that.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Because they want to get people stuck in that dog chasing your tail.
Yeah.
Never catch your tail. Where you just keep chasing for no reason.
So confusion allows them to infringe what they want, right?
Life and works of Yahshua at the age of 10 years. Oh yeah, and this is for Buddy, Guy. These guys always leaving comments on stuff or whatever. So this guy is saying about, oh, how come you guys don't give honors to the Nazarene, and you guys only talk about Noble Drew Ali and all this, right? So this for him. Can't say that we don't rep, even though the vow and don't cut your beard and all that, rep the Nazarene. Don't get it twisted.
But you're saying online you've been getting some of this?
Yeah, just people, the jerky boy leave a comment, LOL. Right? So this is for him. So he could get some Yahshua. You get the Nazarene. You rep him. Right? The great feast of the Jews was on, and Joseph, Mary, and their son, and many of their kin went to Jerusalem. The child was 10 years old. And Yahshua watched the butchers kill the lambs and the birds and burn them on the altar in the name of Allah. His tender heart was shocked at the display of cruelty. He asked the serving priests, "What is the purpose of this slaughter of the beasts and birds? Why do you burn their flesh before Allah?" The priest replied, "This is our sacrifice for sin. Allah Allah has commanded us to do these things and said that in sacrifices all our sins are blotted out. It was crazy. And Yahshua said, "Will you be kind enough to tell me when Allah tell me when Allah proclaimed that sins are blotted out by sacrifice?" 10 years old, okay?
Yeah.
Beating up these guys. Did not David say that Allah requires not a sacrifice for sin? That is a sin itself, to bring before his face burnt offerings for sin. Did not Isaiah say the same? The priest replied, "My child, you are beside yourself." Right?
Yeah.
Sound familiar, right?
Yeah.
You know, it beat up our youth. To you, do you know more about the law of Allah than all of Israel? This is no place for boys to show their wit. But Joshua heeded not his taunts. He went at once to Hillel and said to him, "Rabboni, I would like to talk with you. I am disturbed about this service. I thought the temple was the house of Allah where love and kindness dwell. Did you not hear the bleating of those lambs, the pleading of those doves that men were killing over there? Do you not smell the awful stench of burning flesh? Can you be kind and just and still be filled with cruelty? And Allah that takes delight in burning flesh and blood is not Allah of love. He is not my Father. I want to find the Allah of love, and you, my master, you are wise, and surely you can tell me where to find Allah of love." Right? Set them up. Right? But Hillel could not give an answer to the child. His heart was stirred with sympathy. Sympathy. He called the child to him. He laid his hand upon his head and wept. He said, "There is an Allah of love, and you shall come with me hand in hand. We will go forth to find Allah and love." And Yahshua said, "Why need we go?" Right? Right? Santa Claus, you know, pictures and stuff. Why need we go? You shall come forth. Why we need we go? I thought Allah was everywhere. Can we not purify our hearts and drive out cruelty and every wicked thought and make with a temple where Allah of love can dwell? The master of the great courts felt as though he was himself a child, and that before him stood the master of all the laws. He said within himself, "This child is surely a prophet sent of Allah." Then Hillel sought the parents of the child and asked that Yahshua might abide with him and learn the precepts of the law and all the lessons of the temple. His parents gave consent, and Yahshua did abide in the temple every day. And every day the master learned from Yahshua many lessons of higher life. And the child remained in the temple of Hillel for a year, and then returned to his home in Nazareth, just repping him. And there he wrought with Joseph as a carpenter. I know you like the red books too.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like even in that, right? That these guys try to hide away and hide up chambers and all that, right? Is giving people like basic level, 10-year-old, right? Not doing anything high mighty or whatever. You study, so you know. You know what I mean? Study and you know. And if you're not studying, then you won't know. And that's where we've been in the not knowing. When there's these basic stuff, right, we don't even know. It's basic. Red book, like everybody has a query on gospel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's a standard book that people would have. Aquarian Gospel, Levi Dowling. Like, yeah, that's
If you're looking for
if you're looking for spirituality, enlightenment, or whatever, you'll have that book. Nothing's not wrong with the book. Nothing's not wrong with Levi Dowling. You know, I don't think you got it from Akashic Records. You know, but information is, it's universal. You know what I mean? Buddhists will agree with that. With everything that we just read there. You will agree with that. You know what I mean? Right? The Zoroastrians and them people, they agree with that. They'll back it. Because everybody knows that everything is synonymous. All the prophets you can say Joshua, Peru, Muhammad, Buddha.
It's the same message.
It's the same. This is the exact same thing. So what's with the right? What's with the switching up? Let's just do what's supposed to be done. I mean, right? Foundations of Islamic mysticism. Adams, Manly P. Hall. Telling just giving it all away. Page 55. The Muslim is a devout person who keeps the letter of his creed more consistently than the followers of most other religious groups. But even the merchant is a poet in his heart and shares the Asiatic inclination to dramatize his spiritual convictions. Many strange forms of learning flourished in the Near East, and emancipated Christian intellectuals were perfectly willing to hazard their reputations and even endanger their lives by studying with Islamic masters and dabbling in the magical arts of the Arabs, the Moors, and the Saracens. Right? So dabbling in the magical arts of the Moors, and the Moors. Right? Even though they didn't say African there, for our black power guys, we'll throw African in there. Right? Okay, you put Africa in there. Don't say that the Moors hate Africans. Because Africa is synonymous with Moors. Like, circular logic. Right? Cart before the horse. Like, that's a theme